We now take you live to that conference.
Parasitic capital, you will not be able to deal with monopoly capital. The monopoly capital is your big institutions here are also multinational companies. Those are imperialist forces themselves in their own right. So we need to heighten that. We also need to deal with problems that are afflicting the trade union movement, the students, the youth, as well as the women's movement. We have these movements, but they are not as aggressively strong or aggressively running sectoral programs as they should be. Perhaps even ourselves, we are not where we should be. We have put a minimum capacity of over 500,000 members. Now, I think, Comrade Mhlekwa, it should be going to about 700,000. We're not even we're just below half of that. So whilst we are criticizing these sections, these sectoral struggles, we must also look into ourselves as a Communist Party. And we must deal with the challenges of corruption, for instance. Both the impact of corruption internally and externally on our movement and our government. And how, for instance, the imperialist forces uses corruption as a window to come in with their regime change agenda in our country. And how to deal with the triple challenges that we talk to. And we want to emphasize that dealing with these triple challenges, comrade, they should not just be in general terms. In a simpler way, when we deal with unemployment, poverty, and inequalities, we always say our branches must conduct the political economy study of their localities, of their wards. For instance, it should be very basic, Comrade Kai, when we visit a branch, the so-called briefings, when comrades arrive in a branch, briefing. But this briefing is largely about political dynamics. Yeah, no, comrades. Yeah, there's this and that. Yeah. Now, normally, the first task of that briefing should be about the living condition of the people in that particular community. In this area, for instance, if I were to be a branch, we will say to Comrade Kai, when you arrive in my branch in Kaelage, one of the branches there, we will say, in this branch, we have got 12,000 people. 4,000 are workers, amongst them maybe the following category of professionals. 8,000, among the 8,000, maybe 4,000 are young people who are in school. 4,000 are unemployed. We can even look into the categories of these members who are unemployed. Are they professionals? Have they gone to school? Those kind of stuff. So that when you develop a program, your program is not an abstract program. It's a program that is relevant to your own community. So if you have a national program that is not implementable in your own community, that means that part of the program is not relevant. Make the programs of the Communist Party relevant to your own community, where you stay. And therefore, this is one of the broader political context. But again, we require class reconfiguration of our struggle. And we need to deal with the degeneration, for instance, in the character of the liberation forces. Comrade Braid argues that although a lot of political theory shows that liberation movements post 20 years, they began to degenerate rapidly. He argues that there's nothing that is ordained that once you reach 20 years, they must degenerate. You can regenerate instead of degenerate, or you can progress instead of regressing. Now, we must deal with this particular question. But when we deal with it, we mustn't also deal with it in isolation of the revolutionary forces, as if we are not part and parcel of this movement ourselves. We are part and parcel of this movement. We are also affected by wrong things that are taking place inside our own movement. And therefore, the issue of contesting the whole idea about accumulation regime, because we live in a capitalist society, How do we respond to this? How did this thing of accumulation even create stratas within our own membership? This is quite critical. So we need to elevate these questions to deal with in our discussion. Of course, we are also reasserting party principles. Amongst the party principles that we think must be understood by all members. First is the whole principle of democratic centralism. That is very critical. You are unlikely to drive a revolutionary agenda without democratic centralism.
Well, that there was the South African Communist Party, Mapaila.